Ladies and gentlemen, your Kinky Friends presents a Valentine's Day story from Goddess Giselle T.
Hi. So today's story, as I forget, and of course we said there's always something wrong, and I turned down my phone so we do not get disturbed. Today's story is a little thing I'd like to call the Valentine. Stuart sat sitting staring at it. There it was, pink, red, frilly. It was everything stereotypical of the holiday, and he hated the holiday. Valentine's was for lovers, and he had none. Sure, he'd had ladies in the past and wooed them with wine and flowers and dinners and extravagant trips, but at the moment there was no one. He wasn't even sure that he believed in love, much less the holiday anymore. But there it was on his desk in the office, pretty pink envelope that simply said Stuart. He picked it up and looked around. He sat it back down. This has got to be a joke, he thought. He could hear his co-workers going back and forth between each other, having, well, yet another one of those work days. He could hear Kate over in accounting laughing about how her guy was taking her out yet again for another extravagant dinner, but there was no feeling in it. He heard a rustle of papers behind him and immediately turned to see Ed staring at him. Oh, Ed said, looks like somebody's got an admirer. Stuart blushed a couple of shades of pink and very quickly picked up the envelope and shoved it in his jacket pocket. Oh, I bet it's a hottie, Ed said. Oh, yeah, I'm sure, said Stuart, kind kind of trying to wave Ed off. He did not need a razzing from any of the guys in the office. And now this Valentine was a problem. Well, let me know how it turns out. Stuart was happy that Ed went back to his work. And that's what it was about, really, work. Stuart worked very, very hard at the firm. Day in, day out, he was meticulous about his work. So much so that you could say that became his new love. He got up every morning meticulously at 6 a.m. By 6:15, he was showered and ready to go, and out the door by 6:30 after grabbing the stereotypical breakfast of oatmeal and sometimes a little bit of orange juice, usually water. After all, juice was sugar, and he didn't want to get fat. He would make it promptly to his office by no more than 6:45 and be in his chair before ready to start the day at 7 a.m. Like clockwork, every day he was perfection. He took a deep breath and looked at the timestamp on his computer. It was pretty much time to call it a day. Normally, on this day, he would probably work overtime. After all, he had no women, no lovers. Who was counting on him? He did have work. And that lover always counted on him. But there was something different about this day. He raised his hand and put it on that card. He could feel its stiffness burn into him. And now he was a little curious. Not usual for Stuart, but today he would leave early. 15 minutes early. Why not? Everyone else was. And while Stuart normally would have worked again overtime, There was just something about the day and this card burning a hole in his jacket pocket. He left and very promptly went to his car. Only when he opened the car door, he saw one singular rose on the seat, the driver's seat. He looked around. He didn't remember leaving the car door open, yet here it was. That's odd, he thought. Instead, he picked it up and took a nice, deep smell. It was fresh. And he closed his eyes. This is silly, he thought. He tossed the rose in, got into his car, and drove home. When he got home, he was quick to get inside, close his doors, locked his door, and proceeded to go about his evening routine. Undress, put on his casual attire, make dinner, sit down with just plenty of time to take a moment and relax. He'd watch his favorite show. Only tonight, it was preempted. It was, after all, Valentine's Day. It would be Hallmark love movies, cute little romances, everything that Stuart hated about the holiday. Fine. I suppose it is what it is. He sat back, and after some serious channel flipping, he finally settled on an old sitcom rerun, Friends. And he laughed a little bit, and he was just about to give up on the day when he realized he never did open that card. Well, he looked around. It's not like anyone's watching. So he got up and went into the room, and there was his jacket, that pretty pink envelope, just slightly visible. He picked it up and turned it around in his hands, and for some reason he felt a sniff, and he could smell it. A smell so deliciously feminine. He couldn't place it. Now he was intrigued. At least to say, his cock was very intrigued. It hardened with each inhalation. He took his fingers and slowly worked the flap of the envelope open, expecting for someone's glitter bomb joke to happen. He did it over paper just in case. After all, we all know glitter is crafter's herpes, and he didn't need that to be carrying around into the next 3 weeks of his life. But there was no glitter. He slid it out, and there it was. Perfectly handmade card. He thought back to what it was like in grade school when you would get the old cutout or push out Valentines, and you gave them to everyone in school. Stuart wasn't used to getting Valentines even then. He was always the kid forgotten. But here it was, this card, with the words Stuart on it for him and him alone. The heart that he held in his hand simply said, "To my Valentine." He opened the card, expecting to see some cheesy narrative. Roses are red, violets are blue. Your cock needs to bow to my wishes, and so do you. Whatever it was, no, no, no. Instead, He opened it and saw a time, a date, a location, and the words, "Don't make me wait." Time, 7 p.m. Date, Valentine's Day, February 14th. And he did not wish to keep her waiting. He put the card down thinking, well, this has got to be a joke. Valentine's Day, that's today. 7 o'clock, that's an hour from now. Don't keep me waiting, really? Oh, this has got to be some silly joke. He tossed the card, thinking perhaps they got the wrong Stuart. But he couldn't think of another person named Stuart in his office. Oh, I'm not going to bother with this, he said. He sat down on his shelf, walked out of the room. Who am I to kid, he thought. After all, things like this don't happen to me. He went back to his TV just in time to see Ross profess another bit of love to Rachel, but claiming, of course, that they were on a break, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. And it felt empty. It was empty. He kept thinking, 7 p.m., don't be late. 7 p.m., don't be late. 7 p.m., don't be late. He tried not to listen to the urges in his groin, imagining what might be attached to that scent, that delicious feminine scent. He closed his eyes and put his fingers to his nose. He could still smell it lingering. 7 p.m., don't be late. I suppose, he thought, if I do go and there's some guy standing there, I can always hop back into my car and just drive off. I mean, after all, I'm not obligated to stay. He went back into his bedroom and picked up the card and looked at it. It is public. Okay. Why not? After all, how many times can you listen to reruns of Friends or watch reruns of whatever sitcom was out there? He'd have to dig forever to find something non-romantic in his television viewing tonight. And to be honest, he wasn't looking forward to the narrative of watch a love story, masturbate, and cry in your soup. Okay. But what do you wear to meet someone you've never seen? He looked down at his casual attire. He was rather drab. Polo shirt, khaki pants, loafers. The epitome of dull, but something in his head said this deserves something a bit more. It's been a while since he dressed up for a date. Now, what do you do to dress up for someone you don't know? Do you dress and go all out? Or do you just tone yourself down? And then it hit him. He knew exactly what to wear. He rushed to his closet and grabbed his favorite tweed suit. After all, on the off chance there was something good attached to this, he wanted to be ready. Something about the suits. The ladies always love the suits. And as he hurried to get ready, a part of him just was a little bit on edge. Who am I trying to kid? But something about that card. Don't be late. Don't be late. He suddenly felt like he was some male version of Alice and Alice in Wonderland, and he was going to be chasing the right white rabbit right down that hole. Don't be late. Don't be late. He finished doing up his tie, grabbed the card, and went to his car. The ride over was pretty uneventful. Oh, sure, he saw Mrs. Anderson down the street walking her dog or whatever, waved a hello. She had a look. After all, he was dressed up. And she kind of peeked out and yelled out at him, "Oh, got a hot date plan?" He blew her off and rolled up the window. Oh, he didn't need any busybodies tonight in his business. And this was his business. So, pass or fail, it was going to either be amazing on the other end or not. The question, is this Alice in a kinky wonderland, or is it someone's bizarre prank? Maybe it was one of the guys at the office just hoping to razz him a little bit more tomorrow. They'd have a great laugh at his expense when he came in after a night of being completely dejected and going and waiting for somebody who never showed up. Well, that could happen. Again, he just had that nagging feeling. Don't be late. Don't be late. He pulled up at this cute little French bistro he had driven by several times before and never really bothered to stop in. After all, he did not have a significant other, and this was the type of place that people go for romance, and he had none. He sat in his car for a little bit, just staring at the outside, and he saw couples after couples after couples, and they all sat there making googly eyes at each other and kissy faces and passion and love. Stuart, he thought, this isn't for you. Why are you here? Nope, you're going to feel like an idiot tomorrow, he said, when I go into work tomorrow and there's been no one and I've been stood up. He was about to turn on his engine and drive away when he saw her. To say she was stunning is an understatement. She had long black hair that reached just past her ass, tied up in a ponytail, and it swayed back and forth when she walked. She stood out because she was wearing red. Not that there were not other women wearing red, but she wasn't just wearing red. She was wearing, what was that fabric? Leather? No. Latex? Is she wearing latex, he thought? Oh my God, a part of him was very excited. After all, latex, that is the fabric of sex. She sat down, and somehow he knew this was for him. This was her. She looked confident. She looked at her watch. He looked at the time. It was exactly 6:55 p.m. He made the motion, got out of the car, and watched just a little bit longer, wanting to be sure that this was her. She sat down by herself in a very intimate corner, and he watched as the waiter came. He could just catch enough to read her lips. I'll take a glass of wine. I'm waiting for someone. He knew it had to be him. Of course, maybe not. I mean, she was hot. He gave it just a few More minutes. Time ticked down. At precisely 7 p.m., he saw her make motions as if she was just getting ready to get up and leave. If he was going to make a move, now was his chance. He got up, he hurried across the street as fast as his legs could carry him. He didn't want to seem anxious, but his heart was beating fast. This woman was hot, and he wanted to know more. If this was where his Alice in Wonderland trip was going to take him, and she was his white rabbit, no, Red Queen. He was going to follow her to the ends of the earth. He wanted to know. He almost bumped into the waiter as he made an abrupt stop right in front of the table. I'm sorry. I just came from back there, he said. She said. 7:01. You're late. I'm sorry, he said. I just parked. I see, she said. I suppose this means you're going to have to be punished. He didn't know what that meant, but his cock sprung to attention and he shifted uncomfortably, hoping that his first impression on this beautiful goddess was not one of horny teenage adolescence. Again, I'm so sorry, he said. He promptly sat down across from her and crossed his legs, hoping she didn't notice his cock's dead giveaway that he was interested in anything she had to do or say. But right now, if she asked him to drink her bath water, he would take a sip and drink it as if it was pure ambrosia. Her glass of wine was still very full. He took that as a sign. At least she wasn't going to leave without drinking that, he thought. She sat back in her chair. Well, I guess we'll have to see what we can work with, she said. Work with? Do I know you from work, he said. No, you don't know me at all, she said, but I know you. There was something about the way she looked at him, as if she would eat him up alive. He would relish every bite and give himself willingly to her just to be in her hands. Oh, I'm so sorry again, he said. I honestly, I didn't think this was real. I didn't think you'd be real, but here you are. He could tell he was losing her very quickly. She looked bored. No, honest, no. Hi, Stuart. She took his hand and shook it. She never gave him her name. And as much as he wanted to know, something told him that he had better wait until she wanted to feed that information to him. She proceeded to take the menu. The waiter came eager and said, "And what is Madame having this evening?" "I'll have the steak tartare," she said. Stuart shifted uneasily again. Something about this woman felt like a predator. But if she was a predator, he was willing prey. He finally picked up the menu and he hadn't even had a chance. But before he could say anything, she said, "My date will have a glass of water." He was a little shocked. I mean, he did have a little snack, a little dinner, but he wasn't expecting to be excluded entirely off the menu. She closed it, handed her menu back to the waiter, and then very promptly handed his menu back to the waiter. Before he could say anything, she said, "Look, Stuart, if you had hoped to be allowed to eat something, you would have been here on time. Were you on time, Stuart?" "No." "No, what?" she said. "No, ma'am." Somehow that didn't quite feel right, but she accepted it. She smiled and sat back drinking her wine, and a few minutes later Stuart's glass of water appeared right in front of him. He was so nervous he could barely take a sip. "Now, Stuart, I know all about you, but go ahead, thrill me. Tell me, what have you got to offer me that I might want?" He wasn't used to this kind of questioning. He looked around at all those couples. He watched as someone very promptly dropped very quickly to his knee, and before anyone knew, he was proposing to his girlfriend, to a whole crowd of adulation and applause and congratulations. But suddenly, in that moment, it was just him and the goddess before him, and he needed an answer. What do I bring to her table? What do I bring to her table? What do I have that she might want? What do I have that she might want? Honestly, I don't know. I just got your card, and oh my God, I'm so sorry. I don't even know who you are, but I came. Something said I had to come. And she sat back. I see. Well, maybe by the end of dinner you'll figure it out. You think you could figure it out for me? Oh, he wanted to figure it out. For the next hour, she proceeded to eat very, very slowly every last bloody chunk of steak tartare. And he wanted to be that steak tartare, every last bit to be devoured in the mouth of this beautiful goddess. He wanted her to lick him as she licked off every morsel from her fork. He couldn't contain his excitement, and by now his erection was screaming. If he didn't do something soon, he felt like he'd explode. He excused himself for a moment, went to the men's room, threw some cold water on his face. "Oh, come on, Stuart. Come on, Stuart. What can you give her that she wants? What can you give her that she wants?" Oh my God. He didn't even know this woman's name, but he wanted to give her something. After all, a woman that hot, maybe she was a serial killer. Maybe she was crazy. If she was crazy, he was buying her kind of crazy, and he wanted to be on that train, that crazy train with her. No, he'd been around the crazy ones before, and somehow his cock was telling him, "No, that's not it. This is something far more exciting than crazy." His cock was the conductor of that train. All aboard, and Stuart was ready to get on board. He splashed some cold water on his face. "You gotta calm down. She's just a woman, right? Just a woman." real hot one at that. He stepped into the stall, unzipped his pants, and his erection was excited to finally be free. He grasped hold of himself and thought just a little bit to take the edge. After all, at this point, he'd been nothing but a fool for this woman, this stranger, this goddess. He found himself jerking it to life. And before he could even finish, he got a text message. He looked down to the words. Did I tell you you could touch yourself? He immediately slammed his phone down. He'd never given her his phone number, yet she seemed to have it. He quickly shoved his cock as much as it would go back into his pants and zipped up. After all, he stopped, looked around. Are there cameras? How does she know? He didn't have time for that now. He just promptly washed his hands and left the bathroom as quickly as possible. She was still sitting there, casually, taking a sip of her drink. So, thought we'd have a little me time in the bathroom. Oh, that's exactly what he thought, but he played it off on, no, I just, you know, needed to get my nerves in order. You're very beautiful, he said. Come on, Stuart. We know better than that, don't we? So, did you think about it? She said. He looked down, thinking, I've got to find something. And he said, I have, and I don't really know what I have to give you. I really kind of just have myself. Sold, she said. With that, she very promptly reached into her purse and produced a leash and a collar. And she slid the items across the table. He looked down at the items and picked them up, feeling the leash in his hands. Nothing short of what you might put around the neck of your favorite dog. He touched the leather of the collar. I don't think I understand. She smiled. Well, what's not to understand? I asked you a question. Did I not? Yeah, he said, looking at the leash and collar again, his hands kind of trembling with sweat. You gave me an answer, she said. Did you not? Yes. And what was your answer? She said. I said I only had myself to give. See, that wasn't so hard, she said. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Now, Valentine, she said, put those on and let's go. He'd never thought about going somewhere with this woman. He never really thought there'd be a woman at all at the end of this journey. Yet here she was, and she was real. He closed his eyes for a second and he could smell her perfume, the same perfume that was on that card. And he was hooked. This was his drug. This was his new obsession, her scent. Without thinking, he found himself taking that collar and just sliding latch in place. It was snug, but it didn't hurt. He kind of laughed. No, this had to be a joke. This had to be a setup. His friends at work, they had to be setting this up. He sat down before he even thought about that leash. He sat it down. He said, you know what? The guys in accounting, I'm sure this is going to be so funny. And I don't know what part of the firm you work at, but honestly, guys, you can come out now. You can come out now. The joke is over. It's not funny. You got me. She wasn't amused. Do I look like I joke? She said. I've had dinner. Now I'm ready for dessert. You have offered me dessert in the form of you. So, unless you would like me to find something or someone much more delectable, my suggestion to you is that you put that leash on my collar right now and we can get started with our evening. The words hit him hard and cold. Her collar. He felt the leather trace his fingers around it, thick, yet somehow satisfying. And he was wearing it. Sure enough, this stranger had taken pure, unadulterated ownership. Okay, Stuart, you can do this. You can do this. He took the leash and found himself slowly but surely just latching it on to the D-ring in front. He gave it a small tug for good measure. Maybe it was an indication to her that she could grab it, because no sooner than he tugged that he felt her hand grasp over his, and before he knew it, she held the leash. There, that's so much better, isn't it? Come along, Valentine, she said. She stood up. He stood up with her, but before she stopped, she said, oh, one more thing. He looked at her, very confused as to what it was. He was wearing the collar. He was wearing the leash. Oh, Valentine, you didn't expect me to get the bill, did you? He fumbled in his pocket, and before long he produced his wallet, and there was the bill. He fumbled around, do I have enough cash? But before he could pull out any cash, he felt her delicate hand reach in. She pulled out his credit card and slid it down. The waiter was all too eager to take the card and run it. He didn't even know the price of the bill. It was brought to him to sign, and she took it. She scribbled a signature on it and slid it over. He never saw the amount. Don't worry, Valentine, she said. All that's going to happen, if it happens, is the bank will ask you if that's your signature. And you're going to say yes, aren't you? He found himself nodding. She was hypnotic. At this point, he knew she could lead him anywhere she wanted to, and he would follow. Now, Valentine, where's your car? He pointed across the street. His small Dodge sedan. She looked at it. Oh, that's cute. We'll take mine. Before he knew it, a sports car was brought up. Beautiful little Lexus. Hop in, she said. Oh, one more thing. She reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet and immediately tipped and paid the valet. Remember, your goddess tips graciously. They drove for what for him felt like hours, but he could last hours, minutes, years, centuries. He lost track of time just to be in her company. He would glance out of his side view and notice her skirt, that lovely, delicious latex riding up, and he suddenly had a thought. With latex as tight as that, there was no way she could be wearing panties. Suddenly his cock was very, very interested again. He shifted uncomfortably. After all, no woman wanted to be in a car with a man who was panting all over her. But somehow he couldn't contain himself. She noticed his stares. Well, Valentine, it seems you're very, very eager to get to dessert. And he was. After all, maybe if this leash and collar thing panned out, he could have a little more street cred when he got to the office. He loved that idea, having that little tiny bit of swagger. When they finally stopped, they were in front of a beautiful home in the middle of what appeared to be nowhere. All right, Valentine, it's time for dessert. She got up, walked around to his side of the car, and she opened the door, and there was something that felt off to him about this. After all, he was supposed to be the man. And don't men open doors for ladies? But here she was opening the door, only when she opened the door, before he could get out, she grabbed that leash and gave a little tug. Now, Valentine, now we're playing by my rules, she said. He immediately stood up, looking eager. But before he could go any further, he felt her hand slap his face so hard his brain rattled. Oh my God, what was that? Did I do something? No. You're going to learn, she said, and I'm going to teach you. Rule number 1. Eyes down. He didn't know how or why he felt that, but he immediately cast his eyes down, looking at her feet. And for the first time, he noticed her shoes and her feet, in them exquisite. Each toenail painted a luscious shade of red to match her latex. Her toes almost looked as if they were covered in liquid latex. That red paint was so bright. And suddenly he imagined himself on his knees in front of her, licking and sucking every last one of them. Valentine, I need you to focus. popped his eyes back up, only quickly to dart them back down again. He remembered that slap. That's a good boy, she said. Rule number 2. From here out, you will speak only when spoken to. And trust me, Valentine, you want me to speak to you. That he did. Are we clear? Yeah, yes, ma'am. Oh, no, 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 no. It's goddess or it's mistress. Ma'am, it makes me feel like your mother. And trust me, Valentine, I am not your mommy. Yes, mistress? That's better, she said. Now, rule number 3. He suddenly found that he was getting a whole gambit of rules, and trust me when I say he wanted every one of them. It's not over until I say it's over. Are we clear? Yes, yes, he said. She seemed so satisfied with his answer. She took the leash, and he started to follow her from behind, trotting happily behind her, and so willing to follow her to the ends of the earth. They were at the doorstep, and before she pulled out her keys to walk in, she stopped and she said, "Oh, by the way, Valentine, I don't think you're going to be going to that little job tomorrow." No, I've got plans for you. Big plans for you. And with that, she opened the door and they stepped into the foyer. With that, my story is done. If you would like to know more about what happened to Stuart, you can give me a call at peplove.com, 619-323-6321. You can find me and all of my friends at peplove.com. Maybe I can tell you everything that happened in that house with Stuart and his newfound Valentine. Or we can do a call and I can tell you what could happen in your new life with Mistress Giselle, and you can be my Valentine.
Thank you very much, Goddess Giselle. And happy Valentine's Day to everybody.
Happy Valentine's Day to you too.
Remember the cardinal rule, everybody. Be cool, be kind, and keep an open mind. Happy Valentine's Day.